I remember it clearly. It was a Wednesday when Emma sent the message. I need a break to figure myself out. No contact, no explanations, no apologies. Just that, precise, cold, deliberate. I read it twice and set my phone down. No panic, no emotional outburst, only observation and calculation. I understood her intention. Space, distance, temporary, but not permanent. I didn't text back. I didn't call. I didn't plead or try to explain myself. I observed. I monitored my phone like an analyst tracking critical data. Silence speaks volumes if you know how to read it, and I did. I knew she was testing me, testing my patience, and I had to maintain my composure. Over the next few days, I followed my routine, checking my phone methodically. Each notification or absence of one was data. Every interaction, every message from friends, every subtle update on her social media feeds was meaningful. I analyzed everything. Observation, not reaction, was my method. Then it happened. Her mum tagged her in a post on Instagram. A simple photo, but one I couldn't ignore. Emma, sitting at a local cafe, smiling slightly. Coffee in hand, relaxed, unguarded. I studied the image carefully, like a scientist examining a specimen under a microscope. Facial expression, relaxed. Body language, casual, open. Interaction, no one I knew in the frame. Implication, deliberate display of independence. My chest could have tightened, but I treated it as information, not drama. I considered my options. Respond, confront, or do nothing. Confrontation was unnecessary. Emotional reactions would signal vulnerability. Observation alone was enough. Her silence and public display communicated her boundaries clearly. That was all. No judgment, no outrage, just acknowledgement. I planned my next steps. No rash texts, no emotional reactions. I would let her take the next move. Meanwhile, I maintained controlled routine, unchanged. Interactions minimal. Awareness heightened. Scrolling through the comments, I noted her friends supporting her choice. Socially validated, calculated. This wasn't betrayal. It was strategy. Distance as a tool. A lesson in patience. By Friday, the picture was clear. My actions measured. Her actions deliberate. Emotional turbulence contained by calculation. She would return or she wouldn't. Outcome irrelevant to my equilibrium. What mattered was clarity, control, composure. I set the phone down. Situation analyzed. Decision deferred. Patience maintained. Observing, not reacting. Outside, Chicago continued as usual. The wind cut through the streets, lights reflecting off Lake Michigan like silver. Everything else seemed trivial compared to the void between Emma and me. But I wasn't rushed. I walked, methodical, controlled, breathing slow and steady. Keeping my mind insulated from chaos, I reflected on our relationship. 3 years together, 6 months engaged. Countless memories, routines, habits intertwined. Now all of it tested by the space she imposed, not with words, but with deliberate action. I acknowledged it without overreacting. I recalled the minor arguments, the overlooked frustrations, the times I let impatience slide. All rehearsals for the real test. Not a look, not a word, but a void that spoke louder than any conversation. I reminded myself, every next step required calculation. no impulsive reactions. Every move a strategic choice, like pieces on a chessboard. One wrong step, and the game could change. And I realized something. Silence isn't passive. Silence is strategy. Watch, analyze, wait for the next move. Gather the data to shape your own response. I sat by the lake, wind biting at my cheeks, but no fear, no confusion. A rare calm filled me. The first test, but not the last. And I would endure my way. Silent, observant, calculated, cold, calm, calculated. The only way to survive someone else's chaos. And I knew, no matter what happened next, still held control over myself. The next day, I kept my routine exactly as if nothing had happened. Morning coffee, checking emails, reading the news, all normal. But in my mind, everything was a strategic map. Every move she made, every small detail could hold valuable information. I observed, I analyzed. No panic, no impulsive reactions. Only calculation and control. I checked my phone throughout the day but didn't send a message. Didn't call. Didn't let emotions drive me. These silent days felt like a test, not of her, but of me, of my ability to maintain control in the face of uncertainty. Emma still appeared online occasionally, but nothing directly involving me. I watched every post, every comment, every subtle interaction. All data, no emotion, only data. And from that data, I plotted my next moves. Observation, not reaction, was the key. One afternoon, I saw her leave a local cafe, walking at a calm, unhurried pace. No tension, no searching glance for me. My mind immediately assessed. Confidence, independence, self-possession. I noted it without judgment. I reminded myself, I cannot let emotion override reason. Any impulsive response would surrender control. And when you lose control, someone else gains it. Not happening here. Every moment, every observation, was part of a rehearsal for the real challenge. I thought back over our relationship, 3 years together, 6 months engaged. The quiet weekend mornings, the dinner conversations, the half-joke, half-serious stories about life. All of it now tested by the space she created, not through words, but through deliberate action. Imposed silence that spoke louder than any conversation. Part of me wanted to call, to ask, why? Do you even consider how I feel? But reason quickly took over. No, I wouldn't ask. I observed. I analyzed. I waited for her to make the next move. And in the silence, I maintained my power. The next day, I decided to take a walk along Lake Michigan. The cold wind cut through the streets, but I felt nothing but clarity. Sitting on a bench, I watched the people around me, couples strolling, children running, a few joggers passing by. Everything normal, yet in contrast, my stillness was deliberate, controlled, analytical. I scrolled my phone again. No messages, no calls, nothing. But that was an opportunity to strengthen my position. I ran through scenarios in my mind. If she comes back, how will I respond? If she continues to stay silent, what will I do? If she deliberately tests me, how will I maintain composure? Every scenario mapped, every reaction considered, I realized something important. Love isn't just emotion. It's strategy, the ability to hold oneself steady against the unpredictable. I wasn't passive. I was in the optimal position, observing, analyzing, waiting. No rush, no impatience. Keep calm, maintain control. That night, back in my apartment, I made a fresh cup of coffee and sat by the window. Looking out over the lit streets of Chicago, I repeated to myself, cold, calm, calculated. Not just words, tools. Every rash reaction would weaken my position. Observation, patience, strategy, that was the only way forward. The city slowed around me as night fell, but I remained alert, deliberate. No anger, no hurt. Only analysis, observation, and planning. I understood now that the distance she imposed wasn't punishment. It was a variable in the game of love, and I was determined to control it. And in that moment, I realized I didn't have to do anything. No texts, no pleas, no emotional displays. Just stand, analyze, wait. Emma would return, or she wouldn't. The outcome didn't matter. What mattered was that I remained in control, cold, calm, calculated. By the third day since Emma sent her message, everything was still silent on her end. But inside me, tension coiled like a drawn bow. Silence isn't peace, it's a test. And I, as the strategist, had to calculate every move, every tiny reaction. That morning, I didn't rush to work. Instead, I sat by my apartment window, watching the streets of Chicago. Yellow taxis rushing by, pedestrians hustling, the cold wind cutting through everything. The world kept spinning, but I stayed still, observing, analyzing. Every small detail from a passerby's glance to the way a leaf floated on the sidewalk was data. Then, my phone buzzed. A notification from social media. Not Emma, but her mum. At first, I didn't care. But when I opened it, I realized it was a photo tagged with Emma. She smiled, relaxed, standing next to someone I didn't recognize. An ordinary photo, but in this context, it could be a signal. I analyzed it, intention, to make me jealous, to provoke me, or simply coincidence. I took a deep breath and ran through the hypotheses. Hypothesis A, she's testing me. Hypothesis B, she's unaware, no intention. Hypothesis C, her mom is testing my reaction. Every possibility was analyzed carefully. I weighed which was most likely and which would guide my next move. Throughout, my mind refused to let any emotion take control. No anger, no disappointment, no hurt. Only clarity and calculation. I reminded myself, any rash reaction would reveal weakness. I couldn't afford that. I was controlling the game. That afternoon, I decided to walk through the neighborhood. I observed everything, the way shopkeepers arranged their displays, the expressions on passers-by, a stray cat crossing the street, every detail logged. In my mind, it all served planning my next steps. Coming back to my apartment, a realization hit me. This distance wasn't punishment, it was a test both for her and for me. I needed to prove I could stay grounded, not let emotions dictate my actions, not fall out of control. And I understood that sometimes maintaining self-control is more important than trying to control someone else. That evening, I poured a fresh cup of coffee and sat by the window, laptop open, screen blank. I mapped out scenarios. If she comes back, what will I say? If she stays silent, what will I do? If she throws a public challenge, how will I respond? Every scenario, considered tone, action, posture. Every subtle detail, calculated like chess pieces on a board. The more I analyzed, the clearer I felt. No more impulsive anger, no more emotional pain. Only focus. Everything now was data. Emotions were external variables. They couldn't influence my moves. Late at night, I walked along Lake Michigan under the dim moonlight. Cold wind, gentle waves lapping at the shore, the city silent. I felt every breath, every step, fully alert. I imagined every possible outcome in the coming days. I predicted her reactions, predicted my own emotions, predicted every move in this game. Emma's image lingered in my mind, her relaxed smile, eyes not searching for me, absolute confidence. No jealousy, no resentment, just information. The way she asserted independence, moved through her own world, it was data. From that data, I prepared my strategy for the next move. As the night deepened, the city glowing in yellow light, I stayed by the window. Cold, calm, calculated. Nothing changed. Nothing was beyond control. Every reaction measured, every decision planned. I stood firm. I remained in control, and I realized this distance wasn't a barrier, it was a test. Whoever controls their emotions and actions wins. I stood in the optimal position, observing, analyzing, waiting, cold, calm, calculated. I started to realize something. People who ask for space rarely seek peace. They're looking for control. And if this was a chess game, I wasn't about to be checkmated. Day 4 passed with no messages, no calls, but I noticed tiny sign scrums of attention. A mutual friend liked an old photo of me. An unfamiliar account viewed one of my stories. Small signals, but I understood the type. Someone was watching without revealing themselves. I didn't react. I maintained my steady rhythm. Work, exercise, reading, eating on schedule. I turned myself into a model of consistency. No one could guess what I was thinking or feeling, and that was power. That evening, while tidying the apartment, I noticed Emma's coat hanging by the door. It still carried her familiar scent. I looked at it without a flicker of emotion. Every memory, every argument, every time she had said, "I just need a little space," all of it reconstructed in my mind, converted into data, into logic. I sat down and wrote, "Why does she need space?" My objectives over the next 30 days. What triggers me? I wasn't writing to understand Emma. I was writing to understand myself. I remembered an evening long ago when she cried and said, "You're always so calm, like everything is just a math problem." And she was right. Emotions are the easiest thing to manipulate. When someone wants to control you, they don't need to hold your hand, they just need to touch your feelings. This time, I wouldn't let anyone do that. On day 5, an ostensibly casual message came through, not from Emma, but from one of her close friends. "Hey, are you okay?" Emma said she just needs a break, nothing serious. A seemingly harmless line, but for me, it was a probe, a test to see how I'd react. I didn't reply. I just read it and locked my screen. Later that afternoon, I went out to my usual coffee shop, sat at my window-side table, black Americano in hand. I watched people pass by, everyone busy with their own story. Me. I was in the middle of a silent battlefield, where emotion was a weapon, and distance was strategy. I'm not the type to believe in fate, but sometimes life felt like an exam. It didn't ask, "Who do you love?" It asked, "How far can you stay composed when everything around you is chaos?" That evening, sitting at my laptop, I paused. A thought struck me. Maybe she wanted me to react, to send a message, to check in, to show vulnerability. Maybe she needed that to feel relevant. I closed the laptop. No, I wouldn't give her that. Instead, I poured a glass of whiskey, stood by the window, looking over the city lights. Chicago at night wasn't loud, just wind and light. Everything quiet, like the city itself was waiting for my move. I whispered to myself, no reaction is still a reaction. I knew Emma would notice. No messages, no gestures, no hints, and that very silence would make her think, make her question, make her waver. Emotional battles aren't won through outbursts. They're won through consistency. And I, who had once been swept away by others' emotions, was now learning how to let others be caught in the gravity of my silence. Day 6, a message arrived. Not from friends, not from her mother, from Emma herself. For words, that's all. Are you okay? I read it, placed my phone down. No reply, no rush, no need to win. Because sometimes staying silent longer than the other person is how you claim victory. Day 7 felt thick, almost heavy. The tension seemed to seep into every moment, even though Emma hadn't initiated contact. My observation instincts refused to ignore any signal. Early in the morning, as I prepared my coffee, I noticed a new comment on an old photo of me. Just a few words, but enough to trigger analysis. You okay? Emma's fine, seemingly harmless, but to me, it was a probe. Someone testing me, measuring if my emotions would take over. I didn't respond. No message, no reaction. I poured my coffee, sat at the table, and silently watched the world move. Every movement, every detail logged and analyzed. I wasn't waiting for Emma. I was controlling myself, keeping myself in an optimal state. Around noon, an unexpected conversation with a colleague briefly distracted me. They chatted cheerfully, but I remained composed, not letting outside chatter touch my mental state. I knew by now that composure was the strongest weapon, stronger than any explanation or apology Emma might offer. By afternoon, I decided to head to Lake Michigan again. Cold wind, gentle waves lapping the shore. I walked slowly, breathing evenly, my mind mapping out every possible scenario. Emma could reach out, continue her silence, or test me in new ways. I prepared for all outcomes. That evening, back in the apartment, my phone buzzed. This time, a longer message from Emma, not just the 4 words from before, but paragraphs full of half-hidden emotions, confusion, the need to sort her feelings, moments of missing me but afraid to show it. I read it, set the phone down, and closed my eyes. Every word, every punctuation, every pause was data. I didn't let emotion take the wheel. I analyzed. She was testing me, leaving a small opening to see how I'd react. I had to stay calm. I had to stay steady. I reminded myself, every action is strategy. Doing nothing is still control. That night, I sat by the window, sipping coffee, watching city lights reflect on the lake. I pictured all possible scenarios. Emma might come back fully. She might maintain silence, or she might test me in unexpected ways. Every possibility considered, every move pre-planned in that moment. I understood clearly. Power doesn't come from forcing someone else to act. Power comes from maintaining yourself, not letting emotion override reason. I could be tested, but I would never lose. Day 7 ended with a quiet sense of victory, not meaningless silence, but a triumph of consistency, of self-control. I knew more challenges lay ahead, but I was ready to face them. Day 8 began like any other. Morning coffee, reading the news, office work. But today, the air felt different, subtle, almost imperceptible, like a turning point quietly forming. Early in the morning, while checking my phone, I noticed a string of new notifications. This time, not just from mutual friends or her mother, but from Emma herself. A long message, seemingly trying to explain her emotions. But the crucial part wasn't the content, it was the way she opened a small window, revealing parts of herself she had never shown before. Confusion, pauses, and rare glimpses of insecurity. I sat down, sipped my coffee, reading every line, every punctuation, every pause. I analyzed every detail, her intent, the way she was testing me, and most importantly, the signals of a possible return. Every word weighed. Was this deliberate, or an unconscious revelation of her true feelings? I ran scenarios in my head. Reply immediately and risk seeming inconsistent. Stay silent and reinforce control. At noon, I decided to walk along Lake Michigan again. Cold wind against my face, yet I felt sharper than ever. I observed everything. The eyes of passers-by, the gentle lapping of the waves, how light hit the water. Each detail became data, a map to prepare my next move. On the way back, I stopped at a small cafe. Sitting alone in the corner, I listened to the subtle sounds, whispers, the bell above the door, footsteps, every sound sensitive, potentially a clue. I wrote a few lines in my notebook. Do not let emotions dictate actions. Every reaction is strategy. These notes weren't for release, they were to reinforce my calculated mindset. Later in the afternoon, an unexpected call from an old colleague slightly distracted me, but not enough to break my composure. Life never stands still, and the ability to maintain control in every situation was the true measure of strength. Even facing the unexpected, I stayed grounded, like a chess piece placed precisely, unshakable. That evening, back at the apartment, my phone buzzed again. Emma sent a longer message, revealing deeper emotions. This time, a new factor. She asked about my feelings, hoping I'd share, but without pressure. I read every line, noting the pauses, then set the phone down. No immediate reply. I sat by the window, sipping coffee, watching the city lights reflect off the lake. I understood clearly. She had opened a tiny window, and how I responded would shape the direction of this relationship. In my mind, I mapped multiple scenarios: reply immediately and signal inconsistency, or remain silent and consolidate control. I weighed every option, every consequence, every potential reaction from Emma. In that moment, I realized something vital. Challenges weren't meant to make me lose control, they were designed to prove I could maintain it. Strength doesn't come from forcing others to act. It comes from standing firm in silence, observation, and strategic analysis. Late at night, I opened the window and took a deep breath. The cold air was sharp, keeping me alert. I whispered to myself, every action is data. Every reaction is strategy. Never let emotion take the wheel. Looking down at the quiet street, the streetlights reflected like guiding arrows every step. Every decision had to be precise. I smiled in the darkness. The turning point could come at any moment, but I was ready. I had learned to stand firm, observe, analyze, and maintain control. Everything else was a variable land. Variables could be predicted if reason and calm were preserved. Day 9 felt heavier, yet I felt sharper than ever. I realized everything had reached a decisive stage. No more initial tests, no more probes. Every move was clear now, and I had to choose how to end this game not hastily, but precisely. Early in the morning, I sat by the window with a cup of coffee, watching the city wake up. Familiar sounds, cars, footsteps, birds chirping through cracks in the building. I observed everything, not just the world outside, but my own emotions. I knew that controlling myself was the key to completing the game. By noon, I received a message from Emma. This time, no tests, no probes, just a short, simple, and sincere message. She wanted to meet, to talk, to explain, to reconnect. No anger, no rigidity, no pressure, just a genuine invitation, showing that she had recognized the calm, the steadfastness I had maintained throughout these days. I read the message, closed my eyes for a second, and smiled. No immediate reply. I knew that the silence and consistency I had maintained sent a strong message. I was not easily manipulated. I had not lost control, and I understood my own value. In the afternoon, I went to Lake Michigan one last time during this string of tense days. Waves lapped gently against the shore. Cold wind brushed my face, sunset reflecting on the water. I walked slowly, observing everything, but no longer recording every detail. This time, I felt relief in my mind. Every challenge had been faced, every probe surpassed. That evening, we met. Quiet space, warm golden lights. Neither of us spoke much. Only glances, small smiles, moments of silence, but full of meaning. I realized that victory wasn't about defeating someone else, but about holding oneself steady, allowing a relationship to begin on a foundation of respect and understanding. We talked about the past, the distance, the things that once caused confusion. I listened, she listened. No more tests, no more probes. Only truth, calm, and readiness to accept each other as mature individuals, understanding the value of themselves and of the other person. As we left the cafe, I looked at her, at the city, and thought every strategy, every silence, every observation had a purpose, not to win over someone else, but to win over myself, to be ready for whatever comes next in life. Day 9 ended not with a sense of victory or defeat, but with balance, clarity, and the ability to stand firm against any challenge. I had learned how to control myself, how to observe without letting emotion take over, and how to allow a relationship to truly start from calm and mutual respect.